Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Game Things. I'm your host for the week, Ming, and today we will be covering about the most recent Nintendo Direct, starting off with a very surprising title, Metroid Prime Remastered. The title was basically shadow dropped during the Nintendo Direct announcement, as there was literally no hints that the game was being released at all, and it was announced right when the Nintendo Direct was happening, and a lot of fans were really surprised and happy with this game being shadow released. So yeah, if you are a fan of the Metroid series, I would highly suggest checking this game out because everybody likes a good platformer once in a while. Moving on, we also had the announcement of Pikmin 4. So yes, Pikmin will be making its return, and there will be, familiar faces, the usual Pikmin things, but this time around there will be a new character called Ochi, a dog-like creature, and yes, the dog will have some rather unique abilities that can help you in your journey. So if you really enjoyed the previous Pikmin games and just like the general design and the general vibe, you will enjoy Pikmin 4. Aside from that, we also got a release date for Advance Wars 1+2 Bootcamp. The game, which is a remake of the original Advance Wars, was previously delayed due to certain circumstances, but right now we finally got a proper release date, which is on the 21st of April, which is about 2 months away. Then we also got brand new gameplay trailer for Bayonetta Origins Cereza. So yeah, basically a Bayonetta game that basically talk about the history of our main character Bayonetta before she became, what she is in the series nowadays. In terms of the game itself, this game is pretty different because Bayonetta in this particular game does not actually fight, but instead she controls a demon to do the fighting for her. So in general, the game is pretty different compared to all the other games nowadays. So if you're looking for a different spin on the Bayonetta IP, then maybe give this game a shot. Moving on, we also have a demo that is available right now for Octopath Traveler 2. So if you're into strategic JRPGs, then hey, Octopath Traveler 2 is perfect for you. Moving on, we also got updates to a couple of Nintendo Switch games. For example, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 will be getting its update sometime this week. There'll be new characters for you to play with, as well as a couple of new stories for you to enjoy. Aside from that, Fire Emblem Engage, which was originally released I think around last month, also had their new DLC content released as well during the Nintendo Direct. The DLC itself will contain 3 new emblem characters that you can use during your journey, but it pretty much just amounts to that only. No new stories, but still, 3 new characters for you to mess around with is pretty interesting. Of course, we saved the best for the last. We had the announcement trailer as well as gameplay footage of Breath of the Wild 2, which is currently also known as Legends of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. And of course, like most other games out there, they also revealed the Collector's Edition. And to be exact, what exactly is included in this Collector's Edition. So for this Collector's Edition, there is of course the usual art book, a steel case, a couple of pin badges, and a poster. If you are into Legends of Zelda, I would suggest getting the Collector's Edition, but in any case, it's finally nice to have more gameplay footage of Legend of Zelda because we've been waiting for close to 2 years without getting really any info at all, and it's really nice to finally see something happening, and we do get some confirmation that hey, the game is going to be coming out soon, and it's not just a work in progress that might come sometime in the future without any particular timeline. So yeah, all in all, I would say this time's Nintendo Direct is pretty interesting. Sure, we didn't get any updates on Pokemon, which is kind of to be expected considering Scarlet and Violet was just released about 3 months ago. So if you're really interested in Nintendo titles or in general just want to know more about games in general, make sure to tune in to our episodes when we cover all the news during E3. Of course, you can also tune into episodes right now when we cover our weekly news. Moving on from the Nintendo Direct, let's talk about some other games that might be of interest to you guys. So the first thing that I'm going to talk about is, well, a pretty old but gold game, and that's Team Fortress 2. So yeah, TF2, which I'm sure that tons of you have heard of before, is actually going to receive a massive sized update that will include new items, new maps, new taunts, war paints, etc. And quite frankly, I'm actually pretty freaking surprised. I mean, Team Fortress 2 has been around for a pretty long while, and I would say that its popularity is, not as great as when it was first introduced back in the day. If you've played the game before and you enjoyed it back then, you might want to revisit it just for nostalgic purposes because, hey, it's gonna get some updates. It was always pretty freaking fun. Moving on, we'll talk about WoLong Fallen Dynasty. So yes, WoLong Fallen Dynasty is a game that we have covered before in our channel. So yeah, WoLong is gonna get one last demo ahead of its release, and this demo will be available on all platforms including PS5, PS4, Xbox Series S and X, Xbox One, as well as PC. Players that play this demo will be able to transfer their save data from this demo to the official game when it's released. Pretty good stuff, and on top of that, completing the demo will also be able to give you a pretty cool cosmetic called the Crouching Dragon Helm. So if you guys previously had any doubts that this will be a good game, maybe give the demo a try and earn yourself a pretty nice cosmetic. Aside from that, we also have news that Dead Island 2 will have its release date move up by a week. Yes, a week is not a lot, but hey, getting one game 1 week earlier is huge, considering the fact that we always have game delays instead of early release. It's actually pretty refreshing that we finally have a game that's going to be released slightly ahead of its schedule. Next, we also have a couple of changes to Destiny 2, the Lightfall expansion. And of course, all other expansions moving forward will also have some massive changes. Basically, all the changes boils down to weapon crafting changes, exotic missions rotator, ability tunings, as well as various quality of life changes. All which, depending on how you view it, can be really good things or potentially really bad things. But in any case, it's always good news to have new changes because it means that the developers care, or at least they are, looking to try and improve the state of the game as much as possible. Finally, we'll be talking about another title that has been released for quite some time but will be moving to another platform, and this title is Darkest Dungeons 2. So Darkest Dungeons 2, I'm quite sure if all of you are aware of the game, would already know that the game has always been in early access for quite some time. Just that the only thing that made this game, well, not as popular during that period of time was that Darkest Dungeons 2 was exclusively on Epic Game Store. So yeah, Darkest Dungeon 2 being on Epic Game Store was a bit detrimental to the game itself, but hey, at the very least, right now, as it leaves early access on 8th of May, the game will also be concurrently releasing on Steam. So, for all of you guys that previously didn't get to enjoy Darkest Dungeons 2 due to it being on Epic Game Store, you guys will be able to get the game on Steam now, so yeah, look forward to this. Next, we move on to our anticipated segment of the week, talking about some games that you can get your hands on right now. Starting with a game that I myself am pretty interested in, Wild Hearts. So Wild Hearts, which is another title that we have covered previously, is a Monster Hunter based type of game, but the premise of this game is that it's more based on Eastern Asian culture, so a lot of Japanese like aesthetics, and aside from the usual monster hunting weapons, they also feature a couple of pretty interesting weapons, for example an umbrella, the usual katanas, and some rather interesting contraptions. While Monster Hunter has various contraptions that can help aid in hunting down dragons, for example, like a lot of those ballista weapons, etc. Wild Hearts also have these type of unique contraptions, but it's a bit more different because these unique contraptions, they aren't really like set up on the spot. Picture it like this, right? For a ballista, you kind of know how it works. You just plant down the ballista and that's pretty much how it works. But based on the footage that I've seen on Wild Hearts, it's actually really different because any contraptions that are placed on the field are actually built on the spot. So it kind of looks like an origami folding itself into a contraption and then taking effect, which is actually a pretty interesting take, and I personally feel like it's really different and it showcases some pretty unique Asian aesthetics. If you in general just enjoy the Monster Hunter genre and want to try out something new, I actually highly recommend Wild Hearts because it actually looks pretty good. Moving on, we're going to talk about another game called Blank, releasing on the Switch and PC this week. So Blank is a rather interesting game because it's not your typical action game or anything like that. Instead, it's about a tale of a lost wolf cub and a fawn. So yeah, it's a more emotional story-based game, and it's more of a aesthetically pleasing game that emphasizes a lot on the story. So for those of you guys that just really like good music as well as a very great narrative game, then Blank is definitely the game for you because it will most definitely pull on your heartstrings as you see a wolf and a fawn bond together. But if Blank is not your type of game, then maybe you might want to check out the next game that we have for you, which is called Returnal. Returnal, which originally was a PlayStation game, is going to be released on PC this week. The game itself is a third-person shooter roguelike where you play as a character called Celine that effectively just constantly fights against aliens, and you die and you come back and you progress more in the story. All in all, the game actually looks pretty good, and it will definitely look better on a PC setting, so if you've previously enjoyed the game before on PlayStation, maybe give it a shot on PC as well because the experience will be completely different. Now, we have one last final title to cover this week, but the thing about this particular title is that we actually don't recommend you get this title. It's more of a PSA announcement to actually avoid this title. So this title in question is Wanted Dead, and it will be available on PS5, PS4, Xbox Series S and X, Xbox One, and PC. So you might be wondering, why would I say avoid this title? To give you a bit of backstory, Wanted Dead is a game that was brought to you by the devs of Ninja Gaiden. So yeah, everyone has most definitely heard of Ninja Gaiden before, and it is an IP that everyone loves back in the day. Now, why would I say to avoid this? Because yes, while Wanted Dead plays quite similarly to Ninja Gaiden, that's pretty much where it shines. It literally has nothing else going for it. I've seen a couple of clips of the game in general, and the voice acting is just really off. It just doesn't feel right. The voice acting lacks passion and enthusiasm. It really doesn't look good, and based on what reviews I've seen thus far, the game actually is pretty repetitive. Like your character really doesn't progress much compared to the initial 8 hours of combat. Like, you enjoy the first 8 hours of combat itself, but after the first 8 hours, you actually don't get any massive changes to the combat style. It's just kind of fixed and static. There's like no improvement whatsoever. Yeah, I would say quite frankly, if you want to save some money and want to get a good experience, I actually really don't suggest getting this game, or at the very least, you should really look up more videos on what you're getting yourself into before you potentially put yourself in a disadvantage and spending some money on something that you might not necessarily enjoy. So yeah, that's my PSA for you guys for this week. Now let's move on to something that is more interesting and exciting, and that is free things. So this week, Epic Games Store is giving out one game and one game only, and that is called War Pips. So be sure to get this game before it's no longer available for free. Now, that basically wraps up our episode for this week. I hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and once again, I'm your host Ming, and we will see you in next week's episode of Game Things.